The only problem with Santino and Andy is this podcast.
It's me, Santino, and your boy, Andy, in the morning, sitting
What's up?
here,
What's
getting
up,
ready to
everybody?
watching podcasts. I thought we were doing the whole DJ thing.
Yeah,
What?
that's what I do. I feel like I'm not gonna reach that far. But yeah, what's up, everybody? Hope your ride's good. Welcome back to The Only Problem with Santino and Andy. This week we are not talking about a movie where kids get abducted. Woot woot.
Yeah.
We're bringing something a lot more fun and exciting to this morning drive here on our local station. Well, what's up, everyone? I'm Andy Matzke. I'm introducing us after the intro. That's Santino Vitale. We are two filmmakers from Northeastern Ohio who just love movies, but we always note that they have one nagging flaw. This is the only problem. We're hoping to go for like morning drive time radio is the
Yeah.
long-term goal with this podcast, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I launched into. I didn't know how far I was supposed to go. I had like a whole thing,
You could have
but
gone as long as you wanted. All I was wanting was like a song, like a music thing, and I
Mhm.
got full talk morning talk radio.
I see.
Expectations were exceeded.
hmm Well, and
So
you sent me the McLovin video, the supposed origin of "Damn son, where'd you get this?" Like that whole
yeah,
thing. That's my pathetic attempt at it. But like that's
yeah,
I've been
that's a classic.
it is almost as much of a classic as the 1954 film Godzilla, also known as Gojira, which is you might
Yes.
have to bleep that for cultural insensitivity, but
Um, I think if you can get away with the damn son, where'd you find this? And that's not culturally inappropriate. We're good. We're good. So, yes, we were talking about 1954's Godzilla, the original Godzilla movie that started it all. Now, as we like begin our conversation, I wanted to circle back to something you've said previously on the show because I think it's a very interesting like setup for this and kind of it helps us define terms. You've talked about your disdain for film criticism on this podcast, and we've kind
film
of both
analysis, yeah.
like yeah, film analysis.
Mhm.
We've both yeah, analysis would be the right word. Like like critical
Mhm.
analysis,
Yeah,
film
digging for
broing
deeper
movies.
meaning.
And I think what I'd be interested to like kind of preliminarily talk about with you is where's the line with that? And I think I know, but I think like to kind of help our audience understand what we mean by like this resentment we
Mhm.
have, because you kind of can't talk about a movie like 1954's Godzilla
Mhm.
without talking about like other themes, other like things going on in the world without putting it in its proper place. But I don't think that's what we both dislike, right? That's
No.
not
I
so.
mean, where you're going with this in terms of the Godzilla thing is obviously it's parallels to the real world disasters and tragedies surrounding, the atom bomb and so forth. And the thing is, with a movie like this that wears that theme on its sleeve, you can't separate it from what it is. And it's super heavy-handed about what it is. But the thing that we hate specifically, or maybe I should just speak for myself, is like,
Speak
for
for me.
instance,
Speak for me. Go
okay.
ahead.
So the thing that Andy and I both hate is like, for instance, 1933's King Kong. There are film analysis of that where people will come out and say, well, the part where he's got Fay Ray in his hand up on the cliff and like he's ripping her clothes off. It's rape. But like they make these parallels and go, this is the story of Africans being forced onto slave ships coming to America, and then the white man's fear of black culture and how they thought that the slaves were going to rape white women and all this stuff. And it's like, guys, it's an adventure movie about one of the last blank places on the map. He's the eighth wonder of the world. It's a giant gorilla movie. Like also kind of racist to be insinuating the big black gorilla is meant to represent Africans. Like I don't know, but that's to me I hate that kind of analysis. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
so I think what and I'll speak for both of us and correct me if I'm wrong. Um, what we are perfectly fine with is essentially creative intent can be what like
Yeah.
is what it is.
Hmm.
I think with a movie like Godzilla, there is so much subtext and so much that up until a couple years prior, the filmmakers weren't allowed to do. You can kind of
Hmm.
check boxes of certain plot points, are things that 2 years prior to the movie being released were censored in public movies. So it's like you kind of had a and you had a group of filmmakers who and this isn't what they were saying, but when they got together, they were like, "Oh, we can actually finally do this. We can
Right.
finally do that." I mean, there's still a line, and it's still a movie made in the 50s where there were different standards of what you could allow and have in a movie. But I think, yeah, it's exactly that. It's kind of, I mean, it's the same thing. And I'll kind of draw this wild connection here with the Bible, right?
Hmm.
When you're interpreting the Bible, your goal is what did the authors mean and what did God speaking through the Holy Spirit through the authors mean? But you're not adding things back from now onto it,
Right.
right?
You're
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 not,
you're looking at exegesis, not eisegesis. You're
yes,
looking at
exactly.
what did it say, not what do we interpret the intention was behind it. Because you'll probably be familiar with like dark SpongeBob theories. They were all dead. Squidward was a serial killer, like that kind of thing. And it's like, guys, it's it's just a cartoon. Like,
Yeah.
why are we doing this? Or like Fight Club analysis and all these like I hate the world of fan theories. I hate fandoms in general, and I hate this overly pompous criticism of like or analysis of, well, this is what they meant when they, at the end of the movie, the camera's a Dutch angle to show that now their world is turned upside down. And then like you'll ask the filmmaker and they're like, we ran out of time and we didn't have time for a tripod, so it was crooked. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I hate that. Like, feel free to think what you want, but don't like assign these meanings to things when they're not there.
Well, and there is certainly a relationship between the audience and the movie, like and a personal connection you can make to films, right? And it's
Sure.
I think as this show progresses, we will talk about some movies that we love and have like grown up with. I mean, we already have, right?
Hmm.
The Mummy, for an
Yeah.
example, or even like the Lego Batman movie, are movies
Hmm.
that have profound personal impact. And so it's not like you can't make the movie your own, is also not what we're saying. We're saying, and also to cut myself off, we have a shared love of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is like all about kind of taking bits and pieces of movies. I mean, in one sense of the show, taking these bits and pieces of the movies and kind of running with them. But that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about when you do try to read a new meaning back onto an old story. And so the old story we're talking about today is Godzilla, which I cannot believe you have not seen before.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I'm the Godzilla nerd for those who don't know at home listening. We're big Godzilla fans in the Matzke household. And so, I
Their
mean, I
house is
can't tell you the first time I watched the movie. Our house is, someone's
it's
described
literally
our house,
made of Godzilla.
yeah, someone's described our house as a Godzilla Cracker Barrel. And I think that that we took that and they didn't mean it as an insult, but even if they did, we took it as such a point of like pride that we're like, yeah,
Yeah,
Godzilla Cracker Barrel, and we kind of leaned in. So
I'll say.
there's an extensive Godzilla collection, even within this room in my bedroom. There's kind of a circulating collection of random Godzilla related ephemera that'll work its way in and out. Um, but 1954 is Godzilla. So initial impressions, Santino, tell me what you think.
Okay. So I'm gonna preface
And
this
be
with
honest. Hey, be honest. And
right.
we're going to be honest. And I think when we get to the way end, I'll
Hmm.
have some things to say, set this up that like this isn't the perfect movie in my mind.
Right.
Don't worry. I'll like say that
Right.
right now.
No, and I know that. Like I'm aware, and this is the thing I'll say. To preface this, I'm aware that like Godzilla means a lot to you. I'm gonna
But
be harsh but fair in my analysis. So first impression, this was one of the longer 90 minutes I've sat through because my interest in this subject matter, as you know, is already narrow. And Godzilla for what it is, on a technical level, and this is what we're going to talk about probably more than like the story. On a technical level, I have a lot to say. On a story level, it's basically Beast from 20,000 Fathoms made a year later, but in my opinion, worse. I know that's super harsh, and
Really?
to the Godzilla fans out there, you can send me all your hate mail. I will feed off of your hatred. But it's the same story. It's, there's H-bomb tests that then effectively roust uh, some monster that was thought to be extinct, and then it wreaks havoc, and then they eventually kill it through some weird means of, kind of pseudoscience that they throw together at the end. And there's a romance, and there's a scientist, and the scientist, I think in Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, if memory serves, the scientist, I think, dies, but in this one he doesn't. And it's basically it's the same story.
In this one, there is a scientist who dies
Right.
to
Well,
immediately. Yeah.
that's true, but I was thinking more of the paleontologist. He survives, the scientist sacrifices himself and takes his secret to the grave with the oxygen eliminator or whatever. Um, so yeah, so first impressions, I like the atmosphere. The concept is the same concept we've seen in every 50s giant monster movie. And part of what's going to sour my impressions of the film is that if this were the first giant monster movie I ever saw, and if I saw it as a kid, I'd probably have a huge, huge love of this thing. Instead, I saw, Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, Seventh Voyage, and Jason and the Argonauts as a kid. And so that I think supplants this. It's coming at it all these
Yeah.
years
And
later.
to immediately and kind of based off our previous putting things into historical context,
Hmm.
your point about Beast from 20,000 Fathoms is 100% true, and we'll circle back to it. But
Hmm.
do keep in mind, this is 1954.
Exactly.
So this is like first dozen serious monster movies post King Kong. And
Hmm.
I want to say this now because I'm going to be quoting or like paraphrasing what it was said. When I watched this movie last night with my dad. We watched it with the David Callett audio commentary. So a lot
Hmm.
of the like Snapple facts I'm going to be giving are all him. Like, and all credit to him.
Hmm.
Wonderful audio commentary on the film. And that's kind of like that's even to say what's really interesting about this and noting the time frame between King Kong is all the people who went and saw King Kong and were inspired by it had to grow up. And I never thought of this, that like
Hmm.
delay in the monster movie boom from like 33 to 53, 54
Hmm.
is what we get with Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and Godzilla and them. And you can start the list there. And then if you want to even jump like a generation later to Seventh Voyage and Jason and
Hmm.
the Argonauts and Mighty Joe Young's also early. So like it's I hadn't thought of that. He brought that up. He brought a ton up in that audio commentary that I was like, huh.
Hmm.
But it's like it is this idea that to Godzilla's credit, and I really want to kind of delve into Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and how it relates. But to Godzilla's credit, it is early in what so. But I do
Yeah,
get
and
how
in
that's
terms
soured
of
for you. And go ahead. Yeah.
well, Japanese cinema specifically, this is, and you're right on the money with that. This is one of the first, if not maybe the first. I'm not super well versed in Japanese cinema specifically, but I know given the setbacks that they had just a few short years earlier, this would be a massive thing to come out. And so again, I'm trying to look at this thing as objectively as I can, while still, of course, having all of
Yeah.
my 31 years worth of prejudices and things that I've seen prior to this, and like all of this kind of built up. So, and also something that I think maybe we should start doing since we haven't done it on this show is for the listeners, of course, we always say spoiler alert, blah, blah, blah. For a movie this old, I'm not going to say that, but maybe we should give a bit of a recap of what the movie is. So here's what it is. I sit down, I watch the movie, the thing starts, you get like, these guys out on a boat, and then the sea starts boiling and they die and the boat sinks. And so you keep having all these things happen, and what do you know? There's this, nuclear radioactive monster, some thought to be extinct animal. It's some kind of half sea monster, half land. I think when they were talking about the origin of it, it was like an in-between species in terms of the evolutionary scale, some 2 million years ago. And so now all the H-bomb testing has rousted this thing, taken it out of its natural habitat. It's eaten all the fish. It's got nowhere to go except up on land, which is interesting because we never see it actually eat people. It talks about like that old guy in the village is like, well, once, Godzilla eats all the fish, he'll come up on land and eat us. And we never actually see him eat anybody. So I don't know if that's just implied or if they just kind of forgot that like in the shuffle. But basically, the movie is this thing comes out, it starts wreaking havoc, and then the Japanese government is like, what the heck do we do? We can't kill it. It's already survived atom bomb testing. Like, what else could kill it? So then the next like hour is just them shooting at this thing, it destroying things. And then we have this scientist character that we introduced earlier who's been working really secretively on this. Well, we don't really know what it is. They kind of do this interesting, I'll give them credit for that. They kind of don't tell you what it is. And the girl whose name escapes me goes to like talk to him and see what he's been working on. And so he shows her an experiment. We only see her horrified reaction to it. And then it's not until almost a half hour later plus that we then do like this time jump thing and we get a flashback to the stuff we didn't see originally, which is the effects of this super weapon effectively that he's been working on, which however that pseudoscience works of like splitting oxygen atoms and turning them into liquid and I don't know. It's like it's clearly a very obvious thinly veiled parallel to the atom bomb because we're splitting atoms and doing things. But effectively then they have to go to him and say, "Look, man, Godzilla's killing us all. You gotta use this super weapon." And he reluctantly does and then takes the secret of that super weapon to his grave and we basically vaporize Godzilla underwater. And that's the whole movie in a nutshell, effectively. So for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, that's the movie.
Yeah, and it's a fairly, I mean, comprehensive. There's this weird thing with the movie that and maybe this is less summary and more analysis, but
Mhm.
there's this thing with the movie where none of the people who are acting in it are necessarily, I mean, not the actors, but not the characters
Mhm.
are perfect people. They're
Right.
all kind of doing things for the wrong reasons and kind of it's one of those things that you do have to do a bit of analysis to realize, but the main romance is between um a girl who is engaged to another guy
Mhm.
and this other guy who the other guy's not in any way the like protagonist hero of the movie because he doesn't really do anything. He's
No.
kind of just there.
Mhm.
The paleontologist guy wants to save this thing
Her
that's
father.
killing, yeah, her
Yeah.
father,
Mhm.
who's killing all of these people. But in the
Mhm.
same way, he has enough heart to adopt the last surviving member of Odo Island, where Godzilla first appears, or like one
Mhm.
of the surviving members of Odo Island. And then there's doctors, the other doctor, the mad scientist, Serizawa,
Mhm.
who's like kind of right, kind of wrong. It's really like he's not really given much as far as that goes. And I just think that's so interesting that you have all these people who are kind of like not great
Mhm.
people. They're not bad people. We're used to movies these days where it's like, oh, these are all bad people, but they're all
Mhm.
like kind of selfish people that who, you know, in the midst of this monster movie, right?
Mhm.
They're actually
They're trying. They're
complicated
trying to
enough
do something.
characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it was a long 90 minutes, and I'm
Yeah.
not gonna argue that
Mhm.
because within the long 90 minutes, it's like 20 some minutes till Godzilla shows up,
Mhm.
which is fine. We like our build up, but then
Yeah.
you get one rampage through Tokyo, and that's it, right? You get a first appearance. You get the first appearance on Odo Island is really when you get this first appearance,
Which
and I
that
love it.
first appearance is possibly the hardest I laughed through the whole movie. The minute he shows up over the
Well, no,
hill.
no, I mean, and you may have not even noticed it. I think it's one of my favorite parts of the movie, the tsunami that blows through, and it's
Yeah.
kind of implied that Godzilla's there.
Hmm.
There is Godzilla, like his foot in like the
Hmm.
top left of frame.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think for 50s monster movie, you can't expect much more. But yeah, Godzilla appears over the top, and it's immediately this like mixed, dated effect
Hmm.
that I don't know. I think I'm too inculcated, I'm too indoctrinated to necessarily say anything else.
Inculcated. Inculcated. Thank you, Andy. We
But
need a cha-ching sound for
it
the
might
$5
be
word.
it might be the wrong word. That's why I said indoctrinated. Because I think inculcation's like when Santino's Googling what
Well,
I
no,
just
so
said.
it's to instill, implant, fix, or ingrain. I'd say that's close enough. That's
Yeah.
close enough. I'll give
Yeah.
it
I've
to
been
you.
too ingrained into Godzilla
Hmm.
fandom to say too
You're
much.
ensconced.
Yeah, I've been. I can't think of another one, but
You've been steeped
it
in
is,
it.
yeah, it is this
You've been
this kind of like,
inoculated.
oh, here he is
Hmm.
moment that is like, I don't know. I have a love
Hmm.
for the fact Godzilla's look changes so much throughout which effect they're using.
Yeah,
For
it's
no
a few
plot
different
point,
things. Yeah.
I'm not about to like say, and because it is representative of, no, it's because they didn't make things that all looked alike.
Right.
But I I love it. I mean, it's the same thing with like King Kong, right?
Hmm.
You
A
have this
short
kind
face
of,
and a long face.
yeah, it like jumps looks and like arbitrarily. That's another kind of big one. And I love that. But I'm not gonna talk about the movie this much because I could talk about this movie for hours, I think. So you get this initial look.
Hmm.
You laughed the hardest. Yeah, I mean, it's the only laugh you're gonna get in this
Yeah.
movie,
Well, there were a couple. There
right?
were a couple. There were a couple. There were some unintentionally funny things that happened. But yeah, so the very first time you actually see Godzilla on the hill, that's kind of funny. But I'll give the movie credit where credit's due. I like the atmosphere of it. The look of the movie is actually, and this makes sense due to technology and kind of, setting them back all that time, is the look of the movie. It feels more dated than it is. For 1954, it plays more like a 1930s movie. The sound effects are very sparse. Everything's very clipping in terms of the audio quality. The cinematography isn't as 50s as it is 30s and 40s. Your contrast ratio is really harsh. It's a really dirty print. I don't know if there's a cleaner one out there, but on
That's something they talked about. So we watched because we're upper middle class. We watched it on the Criterion release,
Mhm.
and he comments, and I think the release he was commentating on might have been a little worse, but
Mhm.
it's such a dirty print,
Mhm.
period, because of the film like they were using,
Mhm.
and because of all the effects. And I wanna circle back to that
Yeah,
later. Remind me of that because there's something really cool. I
right.
mean, obviously, this is an effects heavy movie, but because of all the effects, it is just a dirty print.
It's so
So
dirty.
to cut you off, go ahead.
It's a really dirty print. Yeah, no, it's filthy. It's and fine, but no, it's an excellent print. And that adds to the atmosphere too. Like I'm a sucker for film scratches and dust and dirt and grain and everything. So like I thought the atmosphere of it, the look of it was really cool. The sound design is minimal but interesting. Some of the miniature work looks better than others, but the just overall, from a technical perspective, obviously it's super dated, doesn't hold up today, but it is interesting looking. Like it's got a lot of character, and I can give it that.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe I'll circle back to it now
We're
before I
circling back to
think
like
about it.
five different things.
So I think this movie is a movie like Citizen Kane that you
Hmm.
100% have to view in context. And granted, what Citizen Kane was 9 years before this movie.
Yeah.
That's 45, 44, so maybe
Mhm.
like almost a decade before. But this movie, technically speaking, from like a Japanese movie, like this is the first time they're doing a lot of this stuff.
Hmm.
The guy who did the special effects and did the special effects for most of the Godzilla movies is this guy named IG Tsuburaya. Tsuburaya's work is ubiquitous with Japanese special effects films. Um, the genre being tokusatsu. Here's a bunch of fun vocab to add to your Scrabble game, if they're legal
Yes.
words, which I don't think they are, so never mind. But um, Tsuburaya, there's a couple things that I want to say initially with him. One, and is I think this is a case of, and a lot of movies these days are like this, where the best effects are the invisible ones,
Hmm.
because I didn't even realize some of the effect shots in this movie till we were watching a special feature of they found in the 90s or mid 2000s the effects like actual plates that they
Hmm.
shot most of these things on. And I didn't realize, and there's an obvious one, but and I wonder if you realized that when they're in the small village, the background,
Hmm.
the sky are almost all matte painting double exposures. There's the one that's
Hmm.
obvious, the footprint,
Right.
right? It's not, but all of them
Hmm.
are sky replacements. I didn't realize that. And I bet you, and again, like the footprint one,
Hmm.
obvious. But like there's some in there that it is I don't think like my VFX eyes don't go off in those shots.
Yeah.
And this is a movie from 54,
Hmm.
right? So and like they were doing double exposure stuff. So the same piece of film is being used for both
Right.
late and negative. And that's what part of why it's so dirty is because they were doing
Yeah, they're
that.
doing this in camera. They're not running it through an optical printer. They're bypacking a lot of this. That's two strips of film going through in the same time,
Yeah, so
rewinding. And
it's
every time you handle film, it gets dirtier.
yeah.
Every time.
So I just think like and like you can make a valid case for a lot of the like miniature effects not looking
Hmm.
in like absolutely incredible, but I think there's a lot more visual effects in this movie than meets the eye. And
Yeah.
I think that's something you Santino Vitale have to give this movie credit for is how much it does for what it is, which is like a Japanese monster movie that they did put a ton of money and time into. This was Toho's most expensive movie ever
I
when
think
they
it
made it.
was just under a million, equivalent a million US dollars.
Yeah,
I think it was like 900,000 or something like that. I mean, it was so many million yen or whatever the heck,
it's like
but like,
62 million yen.
yeah. And the thing is, like on that note, the effects were on par for their time. That there was nothing in here that would be unusual in an American film. This was the 50s. Effects really were in their infancy, and you really hadn't seen anything that ever topped King Kong or some of the stuff Harryhausen was doing for another 2 decades. That's what people also need to remember is that most optical composites were garbage until basically, the late 70s. Now they're again, I said most. There are some that are insanely good, even in the 40s. And there are a few shots that I'm sure anyone who watches Corridor Crew or anyone who just watches old movies will note are early examples of basically manual motion control moves and double exposure and split comping. There are old movies where they would take actresses, I'm talking 45, 41, where they take actresses, I think Betty Davis, but I can't remember what the movie is specifically, where they play twins. And so you've got these twin effects where they'll have a traveling mat of one that walks in the other. Another one that has really great invisible effects is Bringing Up Baby. That's Cary Grant and I think Katharine Hepburn. And the whole thing is like they have this jaguar named Baby. And so like they can't, because of safety, have actors in the same frame as a jaguar because you really can't train jaguars all that well. So they were doing split comps. So you'd have Cary Grant run through the scene and then you'd stop, get everybody off the set, and then they'd let the jaguar loose and it would run through and they'd film that. And like it's seamless. So there are definitely people, and that's usually what it was a few artisans, a handful of artisans in their respective places in the world that would do absolutely immaculate work. But then everyone else was doing stuff on par with what we're seeing here. So for the 50s, this is not out of the ordinary. I will say that I clocked several of those other matte paintings in the sky. And in fact, the one that struck me as really nice and kind of fun, I think it might not have even been a matte painting. I think it was literally just a cyclorama and some forced perspective. But about midway through the movie, our lead character is the guy and the girl, whose names escape me again because it's Japanese and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. But they're in like a small house and you can see right out into the background and you can see like the searchlights going in the back. And to my eye, it looks good. What it looks like is maybe 10 to 20 feet away is a miniature hut that's slightly up on a slope. And then behind that is a cyclorama with maybe some smoke in the air. And then there's probably a few set hands back there with flashlights just doing this. And it looks great. Like if I were to do that effect, that's at that time, that's probably how I would do it. I don't know if that's how they accomplished that shot, but that's my guess. And it looks great. It's got that very old school, like, again, this was all very common for the time.
Yeah. I think see, and this is where subjectively we can get into this. But if you're
Mhm.
comparing this with a movie like see Beast I'd we'll get back to the story
Hmm.
eventually, I promise. When you're comparing this to a movie like Beast from 20,000 Fathoms,
Hmm.
which granted, and like I'm not even gonna say granted, which absolutely is technically a more impressive movie.
Oh yeah,
Like
in every possible way.
I'll say it. I There are still shots in this movie
Mhm.
that to me, subjectively, like Beast from 20,000 Fathoms does not even touch. And like some of those are like the shots in the harbor. I
Mhm.
think, and here's why. Here's why. And I was thinking about this when I watched the movie. Technically, it goes to Willis O'Brien and was it a Harryhausen or an O'Brien movie, or is it just Harryhausen for 20,000
It
Fathoms?
was just Harryhausen for 20,000.
So props to Ray Harryhausen in technical
Mhm.
aspects. But like design and aesthetic
Mhm.
goes to Godzilla. When Godzilla appears in the harbor, and I kind of said this and interrupted myself. When Godzilla appears in the harbor, there's nothing like that in Beast when he raises his head out. And even some of the stuff, cheesy as it may be,
Mhm.
like when he's destroying Tokyo, I mean, the one shot of like the hand puppets
Mhm.
and there's comped in and this compositing stuff we're talking about is when they combine the film elements, right? For those of you at home, there's comped in like real people in front, and it's the fire, and it's like there's nothing like that. There's the shot of Godzilla above the building, and there's people inside of the building, and they're
Mhm.
like closing their blinds. I just think like from like a aesthetic, a vibe, Beast does not touch Godzilla. And I think from a story perspective, which just doesn't have to be our transition to the story time. I think from a like, and to be fair, and it's not to like um talk down to you, like you have to get yourself into the context to understand the story,
Mhm.
right? So an example of that, and maybe I'm not giving you enough time to talk. So my bad, guys. If you're at home and you're like, he's not even letting Santino talk. You're right, I'm not.
He guys, help. He beats me when you're not listening. When the podcast goes off, it's terrible.
It's real bad. Anyways, the movie opens with the boat, right?
Mhm.
And you may know this and still feel the way you do. What we're essentially watching happen is a recreation of a real event, and not that there was a giant lizard, but a real event of what happened to a fishing boat that
Mhm.
went in like off the coast of Japan and into the name of the islands that are escaping me, where we did all our nuclear tests.
Mhm.
And when the first H-bomb test went off after the war and got all the crew members died,
Yeah.
and this was this big news story, and what you're watching down to like the radio guy of that real boat is the first one that died, and on camera the first person that dies from that boat, that who knows who kills it in the opening scene, is the radio guy.
Mhm.
So what you're watching, what you would have been watching as a 1950s for Japanese citizen, is what just happened 6 months ago or maybe a couple years ago in the news.
Yeah.
It's it's a very ground, like to us, it's a blanket science fiction opening to the movie. And this
Mhm.
is like, and I'm getting so close to the film bro stuff that I hate. But I think with that added weight, like
Mhm.
you're essentially watching current events is your
Mhm.
setup for the movie. And I mean, almost like, like when we were watching Weapons, right?
Right.
There's the way that movie opens is like, but even less specific. It'd be like if Weapons was set in Sandy Hook,
Mhm.
right? It'd be something like that. So I've gone on enough. We can go back to the technical. I want your opinion on Beast from 20,000 Fathoms versus Godzilla. So
I
go.
mean, I know you said subjectively, right, when it comes to Beast versus Godzilla for you.
I mean, I'd say this, like Beast from 20,000 Fathoms is not in the Criterion Collection. I don't think it's considered a classic outside of its technical significance.
Right.
I think that's, and that's,
Well, when you
we
were
can get
talking
into
about
this.
shots
I
specifically, you
think
were saying that for
technically,
you, You were
Yes.
saying
I like,
subjectively, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair thing because objectively, I would say, and both subjectively and objectively. Subjectively, I prefer most of the shots in Beast of 20,000 Fathoms. You have that very iconic thing of him taking down the lighthouse. You have the moment that is almost a mirror image in Godzilla where he's being electrocuted. In the Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, he's being electrocuted, and you have this amazing animation where it's really fluid, and you have all these strobes that are happening from the fence, and the sparks that are comped in over top, and it's actually some of the best animation that Harryhausen had done up to that point. And so for my money, I would say that visually, I think Beast of 20,000 Fathoms does better. It is, aside from those couple shots, not as high on atmosphere as Godzilla is. Godzilla being more of a port town type thing, or well, islands in general, and having the heavy fog and the smoke in the air. They were able to have more of an atmosphere because they were doing live miniatures as opposed to what you can do with stop motion. When you try to have atmosphere in stop motion, there's really only two ways to accomplish it. You can either do what Harryhausen and O'Brien did, which is when you have a full set, you can add scrims between that are very, very low opacity. And so you kind of build up over time this feeling of depth. It's controllable. But that only works when you have a full set. If you're doing any kind of comping or rear projection, you have what you have. The other way that you can deal with volumetrics in stop motion is the hard way, and you really don't see them doing it until about the 80s or 90s when you have the aid of computers. And I know what I'm talking about here because I've actually tried to do this manually. It's very, very difficult. Basically, what you do is you have your room closed off. You have a smaller set than you normally would have. And you just pump fog and smoke into the room and you just diffuse it as much as you possibly can. And then you animate like that. The problem is because you're dealing in miniature, the camera's only usually about this far away from your subject. And so, as I'm sure you know, if you do like this in the fog, you can see your hand pretty clearly. So you have to, in order to have volume fill this distance to be equal to what it would be at a large scale, the room has to be so smoked up that you can't see your own computer screen. Like it's difficult to see what you're doing. And then you have to work in that environment for hours. And then what's interesting is when you're trying to manually monitor the level of fog that's in the room, is you will have a fluctuating volume density. And it happens, it looks like a time lapse because that's basically what's happening. So without using computers to basically measure the amount of particulate in the air and keep that at a reasonable level, which is something they really couldn't do until like the 80s and 90s, it's almost unheard of to try to do volumetrics in stop motion, which I've done 3 times, no, 4 times at varying levels of success. By the time I got to the fourth one, I got fairly good at it. Like you get a certain rhythm of how long it takes the room to empty of fog, and so you add a little more, and then you have to wait and all that. All this to say, because of live action, Godzilla doesn't have to worry about that. Godzilla can just put fog in the air and have the guy walk through in the suit, and it works. So you end up with a lot more atmosphere as opposed to Beast of 20,000 Fathoms. And another thing that you end up with, as you pointed out, is you end up with this current events type thing, this kind of collage of modern things that they're inserting into the movie, not unlike Orson Welles' radio broadcast for War of the Worlds. Obviously, that didn't draw on current events as much, but it was playing on some real world fears, and it was presented in a way to make people think it was a real event, right? And so with Godzilla, I think objectively, the only reason Godzilla, and this is my opinion based on objective fact. So you'll see what I'm saying here. So you'll see where the lines might start to blur. In my opinion, the objective facts point to the only reason Godzilla is in the Criterion Collection and Beast 20,000 Fathoms is not is because Godzilla was made A as a foreign film. Criterion's going to they're gonna prefer a foreign film over an American film because they're pretentious. But the other thing is because it was such a collage of current events that were going on there, and it had such a real world impact. I think if you take away that impact, Godzilla is no different than any other B monster movie of the time.
Well, I think, and this is where I'll defend, you kind of can't separate the impact of
You
the movie
can't. You
from
can't.
the content of the movie.
No, but
So,
my point
so,
being,
so
like,
you can like, and hey, I get it. I'm
mhm,
talking to like a fellow Harryhausen stop
mhm.
motion animation fan, but that movie did not have the same and would
No.
never have the same impact that Godzilla did
But what I'm
because Godzilla has that content. And this is like,
Sure.
and like, this is where we're to our story discussion,
Hmm.
right? Like, because it's this collage and this handling of current events
Hmm.
for the Japanese people, and because it is such a compelling monster movie, and like, granted, we can break this down, right? That it
Hmm.
was in a market where it was a success and they just made a direct sequel,
Right.
right? That then spawned a franchise, which then goes all sorts of directions,
Hmm.
right? It has even more of an impact. And that's what's so interesting to me. And maybe like this is getting away from our slightly tension of our conversation is this movie, what's so interesting and what kind of
Hmm.
takes you aback, and maybe like if I could ever convince you to rewatch this movie after a little bit, would be seeing the sequels it spawns, right?
Hmm.
The Godzilla franchise, and you may this may not be saying much for some people, right?
Hmm.
But it never reaches this level of like story impact, relevance,
Hmm.
message. It
Sure.
never has this much of a message for nearly like 50 years.
Hmm.
And maybe even not even till like 2016,
Hmm.
which is like which is your Shin Godzilla, right?
Right.
Your Godzilla resurgence, which I find that so interesting. It's like, and I'm not the film historian. I'm not, but like, um, imagine if Marvel movies started with a movie like Prisoners,
Hmm.
right? Like if you
Right.
had a
Hmm.
franchise like the Marvel Cinematic Universe that started with this movie that really makes you think, that
Hmm.
really, you know, use it, and maybe like even Prisoners is a bad example, but it's like that examines the culture
Hmm.
of a society at a current time and uses, monsters to depict all sorts of stuff. And honestly, like it's kind of ambiguous because it kind of is this amalgamation. Ambiguous might not be the right word. Amalgamation of cultural issues, right?
Hmm.
Because it's the stuff with the Lucky Dragon. That's the name of the actual ship. Funny enough, the actual ship that got irradiated, that was with the H bomb, right? That's
Right.
not talking about the A bomb. And this is another one that I thought was interesting and I hadn't thought of till this audio commentary. The shots of the crowd running away, right? Which is now a monster movie trope.
Hmm.
And even was a monster movie trope with Beast,
Hmm.
is for an audience in Japan is 100% reinvoking images of the fire raids of
Hmm.
Tokyo. Like this
Yeah.
is what they were really going through. To us, all these times, even Godzilla fans, it's like, oh, they're doing the thing. But it's like, no, this is what was really going on. And so I will maintain, I think you have something as far as cultural impact that's more significant in a movie like this as opposed to Beast from 20,000 Fathoms because of the content and because of the way it's handled. Because like you you don't remember the story of Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, right? You remember, and it spawned more Harryhausen movies,
Yeah.
which had an impact, but it didn't. It's not like that had much of a point beyond what became the trope, right?
Sure. Um, so and this goes back to the main point I was trying to make about the Criterion Collection thing is yes, it had cultural relevance. Yes, it was a collage of things that were happening in that time. The pushback I have is, does that automatically mean that the thing deserves to be in Criterion Collection? Because Neil Breen
No.
films have modern problems, and they're
Well,
not
there's
anything
also,
interesting.
and I think part of maybe what you've said, you need to be convinced of this, but also it is like
Mhm.
technically speaking
Yeah,
an outstanding film because in its market, in its country of origin, nothing like this was done before.
sure.
You
And
had you had
that's the key. That is the key right there. Not to cut you off there, and I'll
Go
let
ahead.
you continue, but that is the key, is what we're looking at is a thing that had impact in its own culture, ultimately had impact in our culture. But this becomes a broader topic, I think, than we can cover in this episode, which is when you have movies that have such a cultural impact. Star Wars, Godzilla, all these things that you think of. And then, or even Halloween, right? Halloween, massive cultural impact. Halloween is objectively not really that good of a movie. It's kind of a long, boring thing that's poorly acted, immaculately photographed, but generally unoriginal. But that movie had an impact. So then we end up rating things higher because of their impact rather than objectively what the movie is. So if I rated, say, Halloween, I'd give Halloween 3 stars. It's done. But when you look at it in terms of what it did for everything else, you have to give it a higher rating because of what it did. And so I think that's where we're at with Godzilla. Is Godzilla is objectively a 50s B monster movie that meant a lot for the people and the culture that it was in.
And I'd cut you off to say
Yeah.
it's a 1950s A monster movie.
Well, sure.
It
It's
is
an A
not a B
monster movie to
movie.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, yeah.
it's a B movie in every other sense of the word.
And I think like you have to respect that if this movie, and we can touch on part of this, but if this
Mhm.
movie wasn't treated as if it was an A movie, we would be Godzilla would have been a MST3K movie.
Well, sure.
But
And
in the providence of it all, you had producers who cared, and you had a director and writer who cared
yeah.
enough to plan ahead. And like that's what I found so interesting. One of the things, and we talk about this all the time when we
Hmm.
talk about movies we like. And
Hmm.
it's crazy that I mean, we'll see if Santino even liked this movie. But I, as someone
Hmm.
who likes this movie, um, what's crazy is without even like looking into it very far,
Hmm.
David Callett talked about how the director and the writer would talk with the special effects director to see if they could actually do the things they wanted to do in the movie.
Right.
And if he said no, then they'd rewrite it and they'd shoot it differently.
Hmm.
And even in a movie
Hmm.
like this, they took those steps and it paid the dividends for now. And granted, it's still dated. It's not perfect. And I, believe me, do not think this is the perfect movie,
Oh, sure.
but just that level of thinking about it
Hmm.
instead of we'll fix it in post
Right.
because fixing it in post didn't really exist yet.
No.
I just think it's so interesting. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm so biased.
Oh, yeah. No.
So it's like, but and to be fair, like I don't think this is my favorite Godzilla movie,
Hmm.
like period. Like I
Right.
don't like so and subjectively, and
Hmm.
even I mean, oh boy, with what Japan's been making, like
Hmm.
even objectively,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna make some Godzilla fans and maybe some people in my house mad by saying that, but like, and spoilers, and I don't want to set expectations too high in case we talk
Hmm.
about them, but the last couple of Japanese Godzilla movies,
Yeah.
wow, like are great, great
Right.
across the board. Have their flaws, have their like cultural things to get in touch with, their cultural barriers.
Hmm.
But oh my goodness. And then you come to a movie, and that's part of the problem is you go from the only problem with
Yeah.
having to
The
do
only
that
problem.
when going from a movie like Godzilla Minus One or
Hmm.
Shin Godzilla is I have nothing else to recommend to you
Right.
in the Godzilla franchise, with a few exceptions. And I would we might have to do like a roundup episode one day where we force each other to watch like 3 movies, and we're just gonna talk about these.
Like a double
Grand
or triple feature
Yeah,
type
like a
thing.
double. We got to do a double feature thing because
Hmm.
there's, and this is kind of funny. Can you, because you're talking about a movie with, or a franchise with 30, 40 movies in it. Um,
Yeah. It's
but
huge.
there's a couple other Godzilla movies in between the modern ones and 54 that I think are like, hey, if you like Godzilla, you got to check these out. But they're so different.
Right.
And that's the thing is like, and that's the thing with 54 is, and even like my enjoyment of it, right, is it's where it all started as a Godzilla fan. And I don't even want to say it's got a message because it doesn't really have like this, everything's ambiguous enough, right? Because you have the scientist who wants to save it, and you have the scientist who wants to keep it. And
Yeah,
well, I
I mean,
said the
I
same
think
thing, and
the
must
the
destroy it.
message. I think the message is mostly, I feel like that was fairly heavy-handed, which is just, mankind is going to destroy itself We have that whole atom bomb thing at the
Yeah.
end. So I mean, I feel like that's more the message than Godzilla himself.
Well,
I
yeah, and
think it's
that's
man's problem. And that was again, this is a 50s, and I mean again, that is absolutely what was going on with their culture, but that was everyone's fears in the 50s. It was the
yeah.
atomic age. Everybody was concerned that radiation was going to do this or that. They were concerned that it was going to create monsters that were going to wipe each other out. And even before that, there was, you remember that cartoon? I think it was Warner Brothers. I could be wrong on whether or not it was Warner Brothers, but they made two versions of it. One in the 30s and then I think one later on in the 40s because it was so popular. And it was, I forget if it was called The Last Man on Earth or what the heck it was, but it's basically this, it's like 8, 10 minute cartoon and it's mostly roto animated, but it's the story of these mice are sitting around on Christmas and they're telling each other the story about how mankind basically wiped itself out with war. And it's the most pitch black serious cartoon you'll ever see. And both versions are pitch black. And it ends with two soldiers in trenches. They're the last two humans alive and they shoot each other and die. And so then animals take over the earth and tell each other the story of how humans used to exist. So that's been in the back of our minds for a long time.
I
Um,
don't know what you're talking about. I'm even
oh, it's
Googling it and I'm
interesting.
not finding an answer. So,
I'll have to, if I can find it, I'll have to send it to you. But that's the whole thing in a nutshell, is, these are definitely real world fears at the time. I think, what Godzilla does well is it takes those things that were relevant to that people at that time and in one way comments on, and another way kind of exploits it, which is what film does. It's an exploitative medium. And I think it does it to the best of its ability, considering what they had to work with.
so a couple well, one question and then a
Yes.
couple Snapple facts, fun facts about the movie that I think you'd think is interesting. One question,
Mhm.
did you notice the one shot of stop motion animation
The
in the whole movie?
tail?
The
Yeah, the
tail?
tail, which is a really odd thing that they chose to do.
Well, Tsuburaya, the special
Mhm.
effects director, wanted to do the whole thing in stop motion animation. He's a big like King Kong fan. Like
Right.
the guy owned his own print of King Kong and would watch it frame by frame to analyze how they made it.
Mhm.
Like and talking about Japanese monster movies, even there's a couple Japanese King Kong remakes, like bootlegs that are like lost films,
Hmm.
which are so interesting. But Subaru wanted to do the whole thing in stop motion. He was like talking with the producer about it, and the producer asked like how long it would take to do it all in stop motion, and Subaraya said 7 years. And so that's when they moved on to Man in a Suit, which interestingly enough, and this is again, all credit to David Callett because
Mhm.
I would be plagiarizing him if I wasn't giving him credit. The King Kong remakes were also Men in Suit films.
Yeah.
They weren't stop motion.
See, that's real quick. That's my big beef.
Is
If
that
it
it's not
if
stop motion?
Yeah, because if this was stop motion, I would probably be singing its praises about as much as you. I cannot stand tubby men in suit stuff. It rubs me the wrong way. And I know why. I know it's a practical decision. And again, you can get away with a
Yeah.
lot more when you're doing it, but I wish there was more stop motion in this. I really do.
And
That's
then
the only problem, is that there's
the
not enough stop motion in this
I'll
movie.
take it. Hey, if that's the line we're drawing with this movie, I will 100% take it. We can maybe, hey, we can nitpick it in like a little bit.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say that I learned, one of the things I learned that I wrote down is that the composer of the film
Hmm.
and the music from this film is iconic. The composer himself is he's a famous Japanese composer, like classical composer who got into film.
Hmm.
Um, he scored this movie without seeing Godzilla.
Yeah. Didn't he do it
Like,
in like 3 days or something? It was like a really
I don't
short
think
amount of time.
he might have recorded it in 3 days because that's like part of why it sounds bad is
Hmm.
literally they were doing, I remember, I don't know if I wrote this down. I did. They were doing the soundtrack and the Foley at the
Hmm.
same time.
Yeah.
Literally,
Hmm.
that's crazy. But
I mean, that's
he
kind of standard
he
for
was shown
Japan then, I think.
he was shown a print of the film,
Hmm.
but whenever it would have been like cut to Godzilla, because
Hmm.
Tsuburaya, the special effects director, was very protective of his work. Whenever it would get to a point where Godzilla would be shown, the screen would go black, and Tsuburaya would get up and describe what would happen.
Right.
And so, and like, and you take that, and that's the guy's experience, and then he goes and makes what he thought was his best soundtrack ever.
It's very reminiscent of King Kong, by the way. The same instrumentation.
I
There's that
would say
it's a
kind of.
very, very, you can feel that influence. I don't know if it's on purpose, but the instrumentation is
I
very
think
similar.
I think that's a and I don't want to get too defensive of this, but that's almost, I'd say you're in the same, well, you're not in the same time frame, but you're in the same time frame enough. You're in the
Mhm.
same genre enough that you're gonna have more like overlap
Well,
than you
sure.
are
And
like
that's
influence.
not a plagiarism accusation so much as it is, I think that's interesting that these guys were really big fans of King Kong. And whenever you
These
have to do a big monster sound, like you're gonna land on bassoons and
and I
double
mean,
bass.
when you think of like theme
Hmm.
though, like it's very different because
Oh
it's
yeah,
because
thematically. I'm just
be,
talking about
yeah,
specific
and also,
instrumentation.
well, I mean like yeah, instrumentation's there. And I just, yeah, I mean, as what I know of music,
Hmm.
right? There is what the 1954 Godzilla soundtrack is like these small motifs that just
Hmm.
repeat. And they just happen to be really good and like
Hmm.
really work.
Yeah, I
So
enjoyed the soundtrack a lot. In fact, not as a to get too ahead of myself here, but I think the thing I liked the most, second to the atmosphere, was probably the soundtrack.
it's classic. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, I get that. And that's part of what's so fun with the Godzilla movies. And you don't have everything yet. You don't have
Hmm.
all the he's still yet to write a couple of classic Godzilla themes, right?
Hmm.
But so much of what the sound of a Godzilla movie is established in 54.
Hmm.
So what else? I think we've duked it out some with 20,000 Fathoms and
Yeah.
Godzilla.
Well,
This,
before we move to the next thing, there is a fun fact I'm sure you know, but I was very curious about, which is how they achieved the sound of Godzilla's roar.
and I should have read the article again because
Mm.
I heard something that downright like debunked the what the classic fable is, and I
Right.
should have reread it. But it's not the slowed down contrabass is what or like the glove and all that.
Mm.
And I should have looked it up. But it's kind of like I should have read it again. But I've read a very interesting article a while ago, which that shows the type of person I am about the ways they made the sounds. And I
Mm.
remember being quite skeptical
Well, and they
of,
changed the way that they made the sound from movie to movie as well. So
Mhm.
depending on, because I read two different things too. So are you talking about the sound of a door, the ship door, and then the other sound being the contrabass? Because that could be from two different movies too. See, it's kind
Yeah,
of impossible to tell what was done. I did hear somebody try to recreate it because I was trying to look it up and I was going to send you a thing about it to see like if we could hear a similarity. And the closest I ever heard someone come was on a they came to a very, very almost. I think if they would have done it a few more times, they would have probably gotten it. There was a guy on YouTube Shorts, and he had a glove covered in resin or rosin, and went over the double bass and scraped it sideways. And then when he let off of it, slid his finger up about two spaces, and it did that and went up. It was very close. I still think it might be
yeah.
a couple more things than just the
And I
contrabass.
think and I think that's probably what the article says is that it's like, yeah, this is probably part of it, but this clearly isn't all of it.
No,
And
there's
I
got
think
to be more to it than
it's
that.
also, I think it mentioned something of like nobody was doing that to make monster sounds,
Hmm.
and they definitely made monster sounds in this other way. So I'll have to maybe we'll do a grand follow-up
Hmm.
episode on that. But
Yeah, the mystery of the Godzilla roar, which again, the roar itself, speaking of soundtrack, is an iconic thing.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's the one thing that stands out to you aside from anything else. You hear it before all else. In fact, I think you even hear the roar over the opening credits. There's just this constant, it's just going the whole time,
yeah.
which is ominous. It's interesting. But go ahead. That was just a little thing, a little
But
spice to
so
throw in there.
so I mean, I don't know. We can talk about the story some more. I mean, we
Mhm.
kind of I don't really have a lot more to say because
No,
it isn't this wild ride.
no. There's not
It's
much
very
to the story.
straightforward.
Right.
Yeah, there's not much to it.
And the one thing that kind of that did get another laugh out of me in almost that Mystery Science Theater way was just the logic of you've got the scientist. And they go to his house and they're trying to convince him to, help them. And he's like, no, it'll be used as a super weapon. The government will convince everybody to use it as a super weapon. And they're like, but look what's going on. And then he turns on the TV and it's like, have you not watched the TV like at all this entire time? Like you've had a TV and now you see it and you see, oh, there's all this destruction. You're like, oh, I guess I'll help. It's like, dude, what have you been doing this whole
So
time?
interestingly, another Snapple fact.
Mhm.
That whole song that's in
Mhm.
there
Which
was
goes on a long time.
which was added after production.
Feels like it.
So it literally in the script was like, "Hey, check this out.
Hmm.
I'll do it." Was the
Right.
idea. And it was like in post, they kind of figured out like, okay, then I guess we'll do this.
Right.
Like, and I think it probably shows,
It
right?
feels like it. Yeah, for
That
sure.
it's like, and to be fair, also, even if it didn't show that it was
Mhm.
this like post-production thing, it still is the like, well, look at TV, like exactly what you're saying. It's like, well, look at TV. And he's like, oh, okay.
Right. That had never occurred to me.
It never occurred to me to look over at my television that's been on this whole time. But hey, that's almost a nitpick. I feel like
Oh, it
that's
is. It is. I just found it funny.
it is. It can't be. Yeah. It's not a perfect movie. That
No.
is what I mean, I already said it.
Hmm.
I'll say it again. It's not a perfect movie. So story, I see. I don't even really feel like
Not much to
what
go over there. No.
there's not much to go over there. Um, it's an iconic film at this
Hmm.
point. So let's cut to the chase. Do you like the movie? Did you not like the movie? And then we'll go from there. Isn't that where we
So
start? Or we want to start with like a rating? Because I can,
normally we do like I think we normally do a rating, but like
yeah.
I mean if you want to just point blank go for like what'd you think of the movie? I was not impressed. I was trying to watch it as objectively as possible. I was really starting to fidget because what it felt like to me is they had about 30 minutes worth of stuff to actually show you, and they stretched it out to an hour and a half.
It's a
Because
slow movie,
it's
man. Watch it with
slow,
the audio
man.
commentary because then you have something the whole
Yeah,
time.
it was
There's
so slow
there's
and
the
very heavy-handed.
scene, there's the scene where they're on the island and it's like
Mhm.
the dance
Yeah, that goes on for a bit.
just goes
And the singing goes
on.
on for a bit. And
I'd be
even some
interested
of
to
the
see
destruction.
if you tried to cut this movie down,
Hmm.
how long would it
I
be?
think you'd land it comfortably. Like that might be an exaggeration to say it was 30 minutes stretched over an hour and a half. I think realistically, you're looking at featurette length. It probably had about 45 minutes worth of stuff it could actually show you. And then the other 45 minutes is kind of filler. We have
And
a
hey,
lot
I
of
think
long scenes where people talk about, well, what are we going to do about Godzilla? And that's really because
that
they had me for the first 20 minutes. The first 20 minutes I was invested, I was in, I was like, this is cool. I like the atmosphere. We're not really showing the monster yet. And then we get the typhoon, right? Quote unquote. And then they have that long courtroom scene where it's like different people showing up. And that one lady was like, "You fool! How can you?" Like she was great, and they kept telling her to shut up. She was great. And then like after that scene, it really slows down and then it's not until you get to like the first rampage of Godzilla that it kind of picks up again.
the rampage of
The
Godzilla,
rampage. Well, he's
because
still destroying a
there's the
lot of stuff
boat,
later on too,
there's the
yeah.
boat,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
kaput.
But there's still a decent amount. It's just I feel like a lot of those rampages, and this is the problem in terms of my attention span for this was I don't mind spectacle, but especially in action scenes. If action, and I know I'm coming at this is from a very this is not a merciful perspective. I'll give you my merciful perspective in a moment. But like, I have no patience for spectacle for the sake of spectacle. When there's nothing moving the story forward, and that's the easy way to do action, and that's what this movie does, is we just get a lot of explosions, a lot of miniature cars, a lot of just other stuff melting. There's that hilarious moment where the guys are up on the tower and they're like news reporting live, and they're like, he's coming right at us. There's no time to run away. I guess this is farewell, folks. And they're like, and go off the side. I'm like, there we go. So we do all that. So that stuff, after a while starts to become fatiguing. So did I enjoy the movie overall? Not really. I enjoyed the first 20 minutes. I enjoyed the atmosphere of it, and objectively, I can appreciate what they're doing. So my merciful rating, see, this is the thing. If we get to a rating, it would go like this. I would rate the movie like subjectively. What I experienced was like we start at a 6, and it's interesting. We nosedive to a 3, and then the movie finishes at like a 2. Completely just
Wow.
disgraced. Now, again, you have to take into account the context and you go, okay, what was going on at the time and what they have to work with and how is this and how is that? And then you have to bring the rating back up. So, an overall rating, I give it a 6. It's a watchable movie. It's not the best, in my opinion, of the 50s monster movies. I get that it's really iconic. Now, if I were to rate it for how iconic it is, this thing holds a 7.3, I think, on IMDb, which is
Yeah,
very
I thought you were
high.
gonna like pull a very particular number for your iconic rating.
No,
And
no,
I was
no.
like,
No, but
that's
that's what it holds right now on
yeah.
IMDb. And I see why. I see to all the Godzilla fans out there that are burning their laptops down and throwing this podcast out the window and trying to look me up online so that they can dox me. I hear you. It's iconic. Who knows what cinema would be without it? There's this whole like butterfly effect of what things inspired other things because you had King Kong that inspired them, and then this inspired other people. And so it's a massive franchise. It's done a lot. For that, I would say you can take something like this and say that for its cultural impact and relevance, it can sit comfortably at a 7. I personally would give it a 6. That's where I'm at. It's watchable, it's fine. I would not go out of my way to recommend it or watch it again. Because I do not care for giant monster movies as you and I have talked about, and I don't like men in suits. But that's me being like tough but fair and bringing my rating back up. So I don't
Yeah,
know if
and I
that
mean,
makes any sense.
I think I
I
hear
can tell
you.
you're crushed. You're absolutely you're
Yeah,
crushed by this.
I'm clearly crushed. I just don't think you're realizing that you're probably losing a ton of the opportunity to get my dad on the show by everything you're saying. That's what we're ruining right now. Is
Mark, I'm
I'll have
sorry, but I just don't see it.
I'll have to talk or it'll now be if we get him on the show, we'll have to budget time for him explaining this movie to you. And then we gotta talk about what else we're talking about. But
Well, I think it's funny that you say explaining the movie, as if there's something more that like some other fact I'll hear that'll make me enjoy it more. There is not. I fully understand what this movie is, which is why I said I'll give it a 6. It makes sense that it's a 7. I did not personally have much to go on here.
when I was thinking of like, and I realized I have like the first half of this thought and not the second. When
Hmm.
I was thinking of how I would rate this movie,
Yeah, how would you rate it specifically?
I automatically was thinking that when you get, in my mind, when you
Hmm.
get pre 1960,
Hmm.
I'm gonna grade you on a curve.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
there's a lot of people, and I think yeah, I'm preaching to the choir here for a bit.
Hmm.
I'm this is for folks at home. You're grading on a curve
Hmm.
because there's a buddy of mine who, and it's the second time I brought it up today, but like who hates on Citizen Kane the way I hate on Inception, right? Like does
Right.
not get it. And what I always have to remind him is like, okay, in context,
Hmm.
like as of 1940, whatever, like this is crazy. Granted,
Hmm.
like you can feel what you feel about Citizen Kane.
Hmm.
We can maybe talk about it sometime on here, but it's like it's still for when it was, it's wild. And I think especially, and I mean you can make the comparison and contrast it with Beast
Hmm.
and especially with like King Kong, which it's interesting to like compare it to King Kong, yet it's a movie that came out what 19 years after, if I'm doing my math on the fly, right? Well, a little
Longer
while
than that,
after
yeah. Longer than
21,
that. King Kong came out in 33. This
33.
was
This is
54.
54,
Yeah, so
21.
20, yeah.
My second guess was right.
Yeah,
Anyways, to compare those movies as like as contemporaries is unfair. But
right.
you're grading this movie on this curve of like, what is it technically in the
Hmm.
context of when it was?
Sure.
Remove like all that we've talked about of like subtext and yada yada yada. And I think you have to get I have to give this movie like, and this is kind of what I've been trying to figure out, at least one and a half, two and a half of a curve. I'd
Hmm.
say maybe like one and a half to be conservative because I kind of want to
Right.
be consistent with this, right?
Hmm.
Is like from a technical standpoint, you got to bump it up just 'cause like, and that's just fair when talking about movies. I think I think what Godzilla has going for it is the way it is way more cathartic than your average B monster movie because you're rarely you this movie makes you root for Godzilla for no reason, but it kind of does. And like it's a way to handle the destruction, and that's kind of Godzilla movies as a whole, as you kind of see this like force of nature. I almost don't know what I'd rate it.
You
It's
got to
kind of
give
like
it. You got to give it a number now.
that's my whole thing is like you're giving this like 1.5 boost. If
Hmm.
this was like story wise just a movie now, and see I'm the other half of like this bias of
Hmm.
like I do like giant monster movies.
Yeah. See, you couldn't
And
have for the audience at home, since they don't know us very well. You couldn't have two more opposing biases here. Andy is biased entirely in the favor of something like this. I'm biased almost entirely in the opposite direction of something like this. It's very difficult to come to this conclusion. Continue.
but all that being said,
Right.
I think in and I almost hate that I set up the curve as much as I did.
Hmm.
I think I give this movie, and your jaw might hit the floor.
Probably not.
I give this movie like a 7.5
Yeah. Well, notice.
because which is a five or no six, right? That's a
Right.
six, which
Right.
is we're there.
We're there. Notice I said six, and then I said, but if we're talking about its impact on culture, that makes it a seven. So
Yeah, and it's like six, yeah, 7.5, which is like kind of because it's what am I reacting to, right? I mean, because
right.
we rate these things, but it's impossible to like
It's impossible to be fully objective.
to be objective. But like you think about what I'm in for with a
Hmm.
movie like Prisoners or
Right.
the like, and these are all movies we've talked about on a podcast, whether that podcast is released or not. But you talk about a movie like Prisoners or The Fugitive,
Hmm.
or then I say it like all the time, like No Country, because it's up there for me, or
Right.
one of these, like it is kind of the top. What am I there for?
Hmm.
Like, and this is maybe an unfair way to do this, but like, not a lot of that's there in this movie. Atmosphere,
Hmm.
great. I love me some giant monster movies, and I'm a sucker for those kind of cheesy hand puppet effects.
Hmm.
There's something to them. I'm a sucker for like the composite shots in Universal Monsters movies of like the castle, right? Like
Right.
if you made a movie of just that, I would probably be my favorite movie ever. So, and that's also part of why I love a movie like Citizen Kane, right? Because it's this
Hmm.
tactile, very real, grounded thing. And so that's why this movie, like I like this movie. I mean, and like and all this being said, and all of what I have said, it's like, but if you are a person who's like, I want to watch the Godzilla movies, like let's
Hmm.
sit down and watch them all together. It's like, okay, this is going to be like the most interesting one for a while, right?
Hmm.
But be ready. Like
Hmm.
we're gonna like we're gonna be it's gonna feel like a while. And technically it's like from a technical standpoint, it's the beginning of everything. So
Right.
it's like still warming up to some things. So it is like this 7.5. It's and to maybe like and to add extra subjective points would probably bump it up to like an 8, 8.5.
Right.
But it's
Well, and
like,
don't feel obligated
yeah.
to temper your rating. If you want to
Well,
give this
no,
thing like an eight and a
be,
half or a nine, do whatever you want.
because it's because it's not my favorite classic monster movie.
Right.
I don't want to rate it too high because it's top 3, top 5
Hmm.
Godzilla movie. It like these are all like it's top, and again, like top three, top five 30s, 40s, 50s monster, like giant monster movie
Hmm.
to kind of nail that category down. It's up there for like Godzilla movies, but I like Godzilla movies. I'm a Godzilla movie guy,
Hmm.
right? Like, but that's still like this isn't this like perfect encapsulation of all of that for me. It's really not, which is like I think kind of harsh, but it's not the perfect giant monster movie. Even though it's what started, oh well, it started the whole Japanese giant monster movie thing. It didn't start the
Exactly.
monster movie thing. But it's so you have to give it its flowers, as the kids would say,
Hmm.
but it's and that's kind of like part of what's interesting about my enjoyment of it. And I think the history of this movie is fascinating. Like
Hmm.
I that audio commentary is interesting. The fact that when you take it over to America, you essentially redo the movie and you like and talk about how things get interesting. You remove all of the stuff that makes the story essentially interesting,
Hmm.
and yet it still has this cultural impact in America that helps spawn the sequels that are what they are. Um, But I don't know. I think it's a good starting point for Japanese giant monster movies. And now that you've seen this, you can watch your other Godzilla movies, which I might force you to watch a couple. I have to make up my mind. I might make you watch my favorite because I was trying to think of how I want to do this. Because don't
Which is
worry, it's
what? Which is your favorite?
my favorite is Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack from 2001. The
Wow.
kids shorten it to GMK. That is
I've
like
never even heard
of
of that.
of the of the two like from how do I want to say this? Of the pre 2016 of your or like original in my mind, like because it's when I was like a kid, all that was of that part of the canon, right? Because you have these three eras of Godzilla movies. Of those eras,
Uh-huh.
it is it is number one.
Wow.
And and then the rest of that gets kind of fuzzy. And if you throw the new stuff in, like new Japanese stuff in,
So
uh,
-1, Shin Godzilla, those
minus
are.
one in Shin. And again, like I don't want to like hype those up too much because if
Hmm.
you watch those and then we'll see what happens. Like I
Hmm.
don't want to, yeah, I don't want to set expectations too high that these are like these masterpieces of cinema that we
Sure.
must protect. But
Well, so
so
you
that's
you understand my position then. Like I said, we both kind of acknowledge that this movie is pretty much an objective six, but if you grade it on a curve for what it is and its impact, you have to give it at least one more point.
it
So,
is not perfect.
right.
It's not perfect even in a way where like and this is kind of like again like comparing it and I didn't let you finish your thought but comparing it to like King Kong
Mhm.
even I'm taking King Kong
Well, yeah.
like
Yeah, no contest.
so
Yeah, and I
but
think,
yeah go ahead.
ultimately in terms of, I don't know, I forget if we did this with Batman. I know we do this when we talk about movies that you've seen, but like the has my heart rating, because there's the rating and then there's the has my heart thing. Clearly, I'm not going to say that this has my heart, but I think, for what it is, you grade it on a curve. I think for me, subjectively, going back to like I said, the first 20 some minutes of it, I was in, and then it slowed down, and then that ending just kind of went off a cliff for me. I think had the ending been a little more, had they managed their time and pacing a little better, which really is not, I think that's a fair criticism to make, even of movies made at that time, because there are movies made decades before that managed their pacing a little better. I think you could probably easily what is it they always say? If you want to make a good movie, have a great opening and a great ending, nobody really remembers the middle. So I think if this movie would have stuck the end for me a little more, and this is purely subjective, this isn't really going toward my overall rating, but just like a thing I was thinking about on the way here, was that if it stuck the landing a little better, I think I could probably have given it a little higher of a rating, but that the ending for me was just the pacing just went on and on. And it's like, I already know where we're going with this. Now, the audience, I'm sure it was fresh. And again, you grade it on a curve, but um, yeah, that was my thought on Godzilla. Obviously, it's like I said, we can talk about technical stuff, and I'm super happy about that. If it had a little more stop motion, I think I'd be a lot more likely because the minute that I clocked the stop motion, I was like, oh, cool, we're gonna get stop motion, and then that was it. I was like, dang
Yeah,
it, like
that's
it was such a
tough.
tease. I was like, dang it, man,
That is tough.
I wanted
Yeah.
more. I wanted
I'm
so much more.
if Subaraya was here with us, I bet he would say he wanted to give it to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Because that's he wanted to do everything that way. And to be
hmm
fair, and what's interesting, he his original pitch included a giant octopus as like
yeah, which
the
was kind
main
of going to be,
monster, which then the producer was like, I'm thinking giant lizard, and
yeah.
they went giant lizard.
Well, and that was
So
another Harryhausen too, you know.
yeah,
Uh,
but not yet. But not
yeah,
yet.
not yet, but it was like 2 years later that it would be a an octopus. But
So who's stealing ideas now?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Um, and it's such, I mean, I think there have been books written, and we could talk forever about the relationship between like the American stop motion movies and the Japanese giant monster movies,
Oh
that
yeah.
kind of give and pull is
hmm
fascinating down to King Kong versus Godzilla being the reworking of a Willis O'Brien idea for a script, which I
Yeah,
find so interesting because the Willis O'Brien movie looks like it would have been an all-time classic, which is
sure.
Frankenstein versus King Kong, and Frankenstein's this huge hulking monster. Awesome. Have you seen those
Yeah, I mean,
drawings?
O'Brien has had so many unrealized
They
dreams.
both did. They
Yeah,
both had plenty of both meaning O'Brien and Harryhausen both had
sure.
these like
Well, and Harryhausen was able, as you know, to bring one of those, which was O'Brien had Guanji, and they were able to do that years
mhm.
later. So it's just funny the way, like you said, the amount of things that kind of crisscross and cross-pollinate each other because we influenced Japanese giant monster movies so much, and then the minute the 90s hit, we start stealing from Japanese movies and making American remakes of them into the 2000s. And so there's just this weird kind of symbiotic relationship with us and Asian cinema. It's interesting. Which that might be a thing we have to talk about more in later episodes as we cover stuff that's not exclusively American. But
Yeah. I'm down. Well, I are we good? Do you have any other comments you want to make about
I think that was
Gojira?
it. I think Gojira. I think that was it. I think that was all the main points that I had. Um, yeah.
They're coming to get you, Barbara, about your Godzilla comments.
They are. They
Um,
are.
but that's okay. I still love you. I'm upset 'cause I don't know if I'll ever find a movie that you actually really like. But we'll try. And I didn't think, to be fair, hold the hold the fort. I didn't necessarily think Godzilla would be it. I thought Godzilla would get a little more traction, but this wasn't like Santino's gonna love this movie. And then this movie that I struggle to get through every time I watch it. That Santino's really laughing, guys. Um, that's all I have. All I have on this week's episode. Like, comment, share if you have a episode idea that you want us to talk about. Email us at onlyproblemwithsantinoandandy@gmail.com. That is not a joke. That is seriously our email address. I had a
Very long email
conversation
address.
with my dad over the last few days where he was like, "Hey, how could I get you guys to talk about this movie?" And I said, "Write us an email at only problem with Santino and Andy at gmail.com." And he was laughing the entire time because I was like, "It's not a joke. It's not
It's
from like it,
funny
not a
too
bit.
because you
It's
guys live in the same house. Like your dad comes up to you, he's like, "How do I recommend this thing to my son?" And you're like, "Write me an email."
well, I want to be able to, and I almost think he might have written us an email, and I haven't looked at the Gmail account in a minute. So allow me to stall for time as I pull up Gmail. Nope, it's all Dropbox and see how listeners find your podcast. I think this is from
That's funny.
Spotify or no, Apple Podcasts. Keyword creepy narration. What?
What?
Anyways, we'll circle back to that in a
Hmm.
second. Yeah, no one's emailed us yet who's a real person. Um, but if you have any episodes or like movies you want us to talk about, I pretty much can guarantee you that if you write an email, even if you live in the same house as me, write an
Yeah.
email to only problem with Santino and Andy at gmail.com. It's in the description. If If you click that and write an email to it, we'll probably talk about it because we will see your hard work of writing us an email and we will talk about it.
The
So
caveat being it has to be a movie that you or I have not seen.
I think we can say that. I mean,
Yeah. I
if
mean,
people, if
if
this,
they're like, "Hey, you guys should talk about Star Wars: A New Hope," we're going to be like, everyone and
if
their mother has seen this,
if
like
the
you live under a
streets
rock.
want it, if the streets want it, we'll have to see. Um, so yeah, comment, review it, give it a star rating, which you can do on Apple and Spotify. And here's the thing, send it to a friend who you like to talk to movies with. If you have a
Who you
buddy,
like to talk to movies with. I love that this
I
is
have
our ending thing.